Call the February 26, 2019 work session of the Portsmouth City Council to order. And Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Battle. Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Glover.
Here.
Mrs. Lucasberg.
Here.
Mr. Moody.
Here.
Ms. Simmons.
Here.
Mayor Rowe.
Here. Dr. Patton had an emergency come up. One of our employees, one of the city employees, had a very serious medical emergency while driving a vehicle, and so she has gone to be with that employee. Keep that employee in your prayers, please.
Yeah.
With that, we have a quorum.
Yes.
And we have, our first item in the work session is the City Assessor's Report. I'll leave it with you.
Mayor Rowe, Vice Mayor Lucasberg, members of council, Mr. Bates, Mr. Ashby, Ms. White. Good evening.
Good evening.
Pleased to be here tonight to present the results of my annual reassessment for the real property here in the city of Portsmouth.
Excuse me.
My report tonight will focus on the responsibilities and authority of the assessor's office, market conditions in the city, and ultimately will reveal the proposed assessment for fiscal year 2020. Before I begin, I'd like to offer some thanks to a few folks here. First, to my staff. They're the hardest working group of assessment professionals that I could ever wish to have behind me. As a leader, I know that you can only go as far as those you lead will take you, and this group is awesome. They inspire me to work harder every day, and I can only hope that I inspire them likewise. To Dr. Patton, Mr. Ashby, and Ms. White, it's a pleasure to work by your side and with your respective staff, and I appreciate all the support you lend to my office. To the many department heads and constitutional officers and staff that I work with on a daily basis, I appreciate and admire the willingness that you all share to work together to meet the needs of our city and its great people. The next three people, Cliff Sales, Donna Poole, and Earl Cheatham, I literally work with them every single day of the week at some point during the day, and I just want to give them a special thanks because they mean a lot to us getting our work done. And of course, to our council, who inspire me daily with your leadership, commitment, and hard work. And I appreciate the support and tremendous faith you placed in me. Pursuant to Title 58.1 of the Code of the State of Virginia, it's my duty to list and maintain records on all real property in the city of Portsmouth, and to ensure that the burden of taxation shall rest equally upon all the city's property owners. State code requires assessments to be uniform among classes of property within geographic boundaries. State code also requires assessors to strive for 100% of fair market value. As I said, our goal is 100% of fair market value, and fair market value is the price a property will bring when it is offered for sale by one who desires but not obliged to sell it, and bought by one who is under no necessity of having it. Just so you know, while we perform many statistical tests every day in our office to ensure we're achieving credible results, the State Department of Taxation does the same with our data annually. I'm pleased to report that the median ratio for properties in Portsmouth, as determined by the state, is 100%.
Your assessment sales ratio is 100%?
Yes, sir.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You might, does the state still have a requirement that you have to be at 85%?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
So we're well be it.
We're in good shape there.
Congratulations. That's
Yeah.
really
And
great.
And I will say this, while that tells us we're doing our job and doing it well, I'm kind of a fiscally conservative person, and I would rather see the rate be around 97, 98% because it allows us a little more flexibility during reval time. But 100% is good, and I'm pleased with that. So.
Yeah.
You might want to tell council, too, what happens if we fall below 85%, if we were to.
Then the ratio that they'll pay on the state corporation commission properties is reduced.
In other words, if
They
you
don't
drop
pay the
below
full taxable.
85%, you get penalized if they withhold state funding.
Correct. So,
Good job.
thank you. The mission of the Office of the City Assessor is to appraise all real property throughout the city in a fair, and equitable manner as mandated by the Code of the State of Virginia, the Code of the City of Portsmouth, and in accordance with the professional guidelines set forth by the International Association of Assessing Officers. This mission will be carried out in a courteous, efficient, and professional manner by a well-trained staff dedicated to the service of the citizens of Portsmouth. Our charge, again, is to list and appraise all real property in the city, and in doing that, we must, on a daily basis, inspect and collect data on all new construction, review and update records on existing properties, perform statistical analyses, process property transfers, process parcel combinations and subdivisions, and provide assistance to the public, among other things. The 2018 real estate market has seen some real ups and downs nationally, and those same ups and downs have been felt in our local market as well. Interest rates have risen to their highest point in 8 years. In the fall of the year, rates climbed as high as 5%, but have leveled off now around 4.6%. I don't think I need to say much about how the turmoil in Washington affects all of us, other than it does. The real estate market tends to react to this turmoil as well. Under normal circumstances, with an economy humming along the way this economy is, the real estate market would react on a faster pace in terms of positive growth. But the instability seems to have people unsure about the future and whether to buy real estate. This results in an equation of rent versus buy. More and more that equation is tilting towards the rent decision and has taken a lot of buyers out of the market. Closer to home, we are experiencing a shortage in supply of new housing. Millennials were responsible for 45% of all mortgage loans in 2018, and they desire new inventory. In Portsmouth, we sorely need new inventory, so I look forward to Afton Green getting started, and Newport is humming along, but we've still got a lot of land out there that we can capitalize on. All that said, the biggest issue facing the real estate market in Portsmouth is perception. Portsmouth has been for some time misperceived, and I want to highlight misperceived, as a place you don't want to buy a house. We who live here know otherwise and understand that Portsmouth is far, far better than it is perceived. While I listed rising interest rates as one of the major obstacles in the real estate market, it's important to know that despite climbing throughout the year, rates remain lower than they were during the recession and below average for an economy with the growth of ours currently. Nationally, the market has continued to grow, albeit slow, for the 6th consecutive year. The sustained loosening of credit has brought more and more buyers back into the market in spite of rising interest rates. With the economy remaining healthy and the resulting labor market being very robust, growth in the real estate market has been and should remain steady. Much closer to home,
Sorry.
I want to commend this council for the vision of their 4 big things. Those 4 things: becoming the best city to do business, enhancing our neighborhoods, remaining committed to education, and enhancing the city's perception, are 4 things that will have a major impact on our real estate market. The next few slides summarize some key market data right here in Portsmouth. The data we're going to see here is positive and shows a steady, healthy pattern of growth. First is the total transfers over the last 6 years, and as you can see, this trend is upward since 2014.
Do you know what the growth rate is, percentage-wise? That's okay.
I don't, I'm sorry. Next, looking at total foreclosures, we can see that they've trended down for the 4th straight year. Now, nationally, foreclosure starts have increased in 2018, but we have remained on a downward trend throughout the year, and that's a good sign. And again, here we see the percentage of foreclosures to sales, and that's continued to go down as well, and we're down to single digits now, which is a great sign. The average days on the market for sold properties is trending down rather slowly, but I think it's at a point now where 72 days is pretty good, and I think we'll see this level out over the next couple of years. Maybe kind of bounce up and down a little bit between here and maybe 85 days, but I think 72 days is a very promising number, is a good number.
Do we know how that compares regionally?
I can get that for you. I don't.
Be interested to
Yeah.
know how the other.
Yes, sir.
And the thing about averages, there's some that are going to be lower and some higher.
There are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we got some very short-term.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And the average residential sales price, again, is trending upward. This trend is slow but steady and sustained, and I like to see sustained.
And this is average, not median.
Correct. The next few slides show the percentage of increase in each neighborhood as a result of this year's reassessment. You'll notice, we could talk all night about these, but you'll notice on page 16, there's one neighborhood that's missing, and that's Pepperwood, which is not a mistake. Pepperwood was a condo complex consisting of 155 properties or units owned by a single individual. And that individual had the condo declaration rescinded by deed and combined that into one parcel now. So it's treated as an apartment complex. Didn't lose any value there because I valued it based on the income approach as an apartment complex. And it came off the residential side. It's now a commercial subdivision. So the results of the reassessment revealed the following. We have 31,919 taxable residential parcels in 184 neighborhoods. We have 2,431 commercial taxable parcels in 7 districts. 25% of all residential neighborhoods decreased in value. 36% of residential neighborhoods increased in value, and 39% saw no change. Residential property values increased by about 0.5%, a little more than 0.5%, and commercial property values increased by 1.23%. The total value of the land book for July 1, 2018 was $7.4 billion. The total proposed value for the next land book is $7.6 billion, a total percentage increase of 1.48%, a total dollar value increase of $110,649,606, and a total impact on revenue at the current tax rate is $1.4 million.
How much of that increase, the 110, is new construction?
New construction is around 70 million.
Okay.
So appreciation is
About 50
about half a percent. I'd also add that this reassessment number does not include our fourth quarter building permit activity, which is going to be a big quarter. I expect somewhere north of $40 million in additional value to be added to this number. And that would add another $520,000 in taxes. The State Corporation Commission assesses railroads, pipelines, and utility companies. Their assessments are typically not available until mid to late September. They're taxable at the same rate that we set or that you all set as the tax rate for the other properties in the city. And currently, we have $127 million in value in State Corporation Commission properties, or $1.6 million in total levies.
That includes railroad track and rail yards and...
Correct. Yes, sir. Okay. The Disabled Veterans Tax Relief Program has grown from 280 recipients last year to 336 recipients this year. The total abated value is $59.6 million and totals almost $775,000 in annual exonerations. The exonerations are up nearly $35,000 from last year. The Senior Citizen Tax Relief and Tax Freeze programs are run by the Department of Social Services. Those programs are down roughly 10% in total exonerations this year.
So roughly 3 pennies, this equates to about 3 cents tax rate. Did I get that right? 1 penny equals about 800,000.
Correct. Yeah, that's about. This chart shows a percentage of taxable versus non-taxable real estate in terms of total assessment. The non-taxable number will probably climb slightly higher before we run our official land book in July.
Say that again, please.
The non-taxable will rise slightly. And the reason is I'm reevaluating a lot of that, and I'm still working on that. It'll be ready for the land book, but it's not ready at this point. But I expect to see that number tick up a little bit to over 43%. It's at 42.8 right now, I think, or 9. So it's going to bump up just slightly for the next land book.
No?
That number seems, even with the adjustment that you said is coming, seems a lot lower than that we've used in the past. Has anything changed?
Nothing's changed, but I think
We've inflated the number.
it depends on the way the question is asked and how it's answered.
That's right.
So sometimes the question is how much non-taxable land is there, and those things kind of come out as different numbers. So this is actual taxable value.
It's value, not parcels.
Correct.
Yeah.
Or
It's-
acreage.
Or acreage, it's value assessment.
Well, even if you look at acreage, it's not 42%.
It's not, no, but
Yeah.
and this slide shows the non-taxable property by type. Who has it?
Others is everybody else, nonprofits.
Beasley Foundation, yeah, those types of things.
Wow. A lot of money.
Elizabeth?
On this slide, I was thinking about this last night, what we were talking about, but I didn't bring it up. When we talk about church property, we have a lot of churches and synagogues and what have you, and the religious institutions in the city who operate schools now. But the schools are not taxed either, is that correct?
Yeah, they are. I mean, are not taxed.
They're
not taxed,
So
I'm sorry. I
if
thought you
you've
said
got a
that.
piece of land and there's the religious institution on part of it and a school on the other part,
It's
the
not.
school's treated the same as the church building.
Correct.
And the school probably has its own tax exempt status.
Some of them do, some of them operate under the same
Yeah.
as the church.
So is there any chance in the future, near or distant, that any of these figures will adjust to our favor at any time?
You know, we've got, I mean, the EDA has a lot of that local government property that's gonna turn into something really good in the next couple of years, I think. The Newport property, for one, is gonna put a lot more money on the tax rolls than was on it before we got it. So the answer to that question is yes. And, you know, what could happen here as well, so.
But I would bet that the vast majority of the others won't change.
They're not going to. Yeah,
China
that's a
is more.
safe bet.
So moving forward, assessment notices will be mailed starting Thursday. Informal appeal hearings will be heard from March 15th through the 29th. Staff will continue to process new construction and alteration value additions for fourth quarter, and the land book will be produced after fourth quarter and will be effective July 1, 2019. Now, the only bad news I have to report is our CAMA system is still not operating, and the main reason for that not going live this year is me. I put it on hold, and I put it on hold for two reasons. One, we were having some data migration issues, mainly on the commercial side of the house, that concerned me, and I didn't want to. We could have fixed them live in the system, but I don't think it's a good way to go forward to fix those types of issues in the new system. We need to fix them in the old system and push them through the new system. So that's what we're doing now. The other reason is Vision had agreed to upgrade us to their latest version 8 software that is written for Virginia clients. And on the timeline I was on, we would have been the guinea pig, the first ones. And I didn't want to be that. So now there's 8 or 9 localities that are running it, and it is working, and it's very successful. And we're moving forward with our conversion, finalizing our conversion, and getting it live as soon as possible.
It appears it's not having any negative impact. If you're at 100%, you're getting the job done.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's hard, but it'll be a lot easier when
Bill?
I was going to just ask, how long have we had this system now?
way too long.
Long time.
The year and a half I've been here, and then 6 years before that, so it's been too long.
Aging.
Yeah, I mean, that represented a large investment to,
It is a large investment.
and I'm sure if it was up and running, it'd make things a little more efficient in your office. I guess my question is, what can we do to expedite that?
You know, I think we're doing everything now that we can to expedite it. I think we're in a good place. We have a good timeline from vision to get over the finish line now. Mr. Jones, and I've got Russell Bailey in my office that's working day and night, you know, trying to figure all these migration issues out. So I think we're ready to cross the line. We just got to do it now. So I don't think I need anything. I just need to get it done.
Okay.
Elizabeth, and then Lisa.
Billy, on page 14 under the list of all the neighborhoods, there is a Brandon Square at 24.25%. First of all, where is that, and what in the world makes something go up 24%?
So Brandon Square is a townhouse community out in Churchland, and there have not been any sales in there for years. And all of a sudden, there were 5 or 6 sales this year, and they were at 70%, 72%, and we had to make an adjustment, and we did. You know, I'm prepared for an argument from them if they come forward, but it's, you know, it's proved out in the market.
Do you know that, you may not know this, what is the percentage of owner-occupied homes in Brandon Square?
I'm studying that now. I can tell you that the rents that they're getting for those units are supporting our values.
That's where I was going on that.
Very well. So
I've seen another question. I had a question, but mine is on
Are
the
you
same page
done?
too. So.
Okay. We'll go Lisa.
Okay.
We'll just go right on down the line.
Okay. Same slide, and on the opposite end of Elizabeth, the Arcadia Heights. I mean, what attributes to the negative? I mean, do people just sell and
it's
don't
the
come
market.
back in, or?
Yeah, it's the market. You know, I would have to look up that particular neighborhood to see, you know,
So any of the
where we
negatives
were.
are when people move out,
Correct, if
Okay.
they sell below what our assessment
below
is.
the what market value is.
Mr. Butt.
Well, Nate.
No, I was good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Shannon.
Mr. Butt, congratulations again to you and your team on achieving the 100% of the fair market value. Have we ever dropped below the 85% in
Not
your
that
time?
I'm aware of. Not in my time, no, sir.
That I can recall.
I don't ever remember.
Have we ever been in the 80s?
I don't know the answer to that question. I've looked back as far as I can see, and we haven't.
Good job.
Anything else?
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good job. Our next item is the City of Portsmouth's second quarter financial report, and LaVorse, I assume the CFO is coming?
Yes.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council. Tonight, I'm going to present our second quarter financial statements. This is be a broad overview, and so it runs from July 1 through December 31st. On the first page, we have our revenues showing a 3-year comparison. One reminder is, especially when we're looking at our revenues and expenditures during this time period, it doesn't equate because of the way that accounting standards require us to report revenues and expenditures, it does not equate to a full 6 months, because some of those expenditures that were paid in those months have been booked back to the previous year. So you would never expect to see 50% of our budget having come in as revenue at this time of the year. The good news is most of our tax revenue is up, and those are our larger numbers. Utility tax revenue is down. It's been trending down. It's another thing about these mid-year financials. Being in that December time frame, there are some transactions that don't get recorded in December because they come in on both the revenue and expenditure side in January because of the holidays do change some things as far as payment. So I would not expect the utility tax revenues to stay at that same low level, but that is a revenue source that we're not getting as much revenue from, and we haven't over many years. The rest of the revenues seem to be very comparable with the prior years.
Hold on,
Yeah.
please. We have a question.
Yes.
I thought you was ready to move to the next slide.
Well, I was just going to mention the bottom line planned use of fund balance that's budgeted. Now we never spend out of that line. What happens is our expenditures. That is a revenue source, but the expenditures are where the expenditures happen. And I have a slide that is just on fund balance to show as a reminder what the differences are in this year and last year, because that looks it looks a little odd showing it side by side.
And then the question with the bridge loan from the state was for the port, so how are we paying that back?
Haven't started yet.
Haven't started.
Yes, under the agreement with the state, we are not yet in payback situation, and we do have another. You can see that it's not in this year yet, but we have been working on with the state on that new agreement, revised agreement for that money. So they're assuring us the money's coming. We just had to revise the agreement to accept it.
If you recall, we don't pay that back until the construction is completed and the actual property is there for us to tax.
There is a date that if it wasn't to come back, the values weren't to come back, we have to pay anyway. But that's not this budget year.
The good thing is that they're ahead of schedule, and so we'll meet that.
Very good.
On utility tax, the adjustment from last year to this year, is it because the state made the structural change in that tax and took what used to be local money to itself?
I'm going to tell you that I don't have enough history to know for sure, but I can tell that we budgeted half of what we budgeted in the previous year, so it seems reasonable. That was something that has to have been planned. We can get back with you.
Please.
Yeah, okay, we will.
It's more the reason, not it's the qualitative side,
Right.
not the quantitative side.
Right. So we'll get back with City Council on that. Anything else on revenue? No surprises in expenditures. They are very consistent with where we would expect them to be, and slightly on the lower side. At 38.81% of budget. Again, just like I said with revenues, some of these calculations will be slightly, well, in some instances it'll be very different come the third quarter, because a lot of the accounting will have caught up with the period in time. Okay. Speaking of general fund balance, we did end the year 2018 with a fund balance with an unassigned fund balance of about $56.7 million. That is $670,000 less than the prior year. But as a reminder from the first slide, we had budgeted to use $5.8 million, and so that's a big difference than the $700,000 that we needed to use. So that's good news. What we used was planned. There's been a number of changes in fund balance this year. One of them being temporary. So I just wanted to run through them. In fiscal 19 budget, we did plan to use some fund balance again at 5.768 at $5.768. We did provide retiree supplements and employee one-time bonuses this year. We made a temporary loan to EDA to acquire the Victory Village property. EDA has received their bond proceeds, and the city has been repaid. So you see that on the second to the last line. And then we bought some property on High Street. So those are the differences that from last year that made it look very different. On the right-hand side of the screen, that is assigned fund balance. Another quirk in the accounting system, or the accounting rules, is when we received the school reappropriations, because that was outside of 60 days from year end, we initially, even though the money didn't go to the general fund, we initially had to record it in the general fund, and then we immediately moved it out. So when you're looking at the CAFR this weekend, you will see you'll see a new line that says assigned fund balance, and I just wanted to let you know what that number is, but it's not. It was there for one paper day, so it was in the paper trail, but it really was never in the general fund. And then all of our other funds are based on prior year. The percentages of revenues and the percentages of expenditures are very much where we have seen them trend in the past few years. Any questions?
Any questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next is the fiscal year 20 Community Development Block Grant Funds, and Mr. Pace, who's going to do that?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, good evening. Mr. Jeff Crimer, CDBG Home and Manager, will present the FY20 proposed Community Development Block Home Program proposed budget. Mr. Crimer.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. I'm going to give... Yes.
I know you're excited. It's okay. There you go.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're ready now. So we're going to do an overview of the Community Development Block Grant Program and the Home Program. This one?
For the audience, can you provide the definition of those two programs?
Yes.
Community Development and Home.
Yes, we'll talk about it. So this year we need to do a 5-year plan, a 5-year consolidated plan for the next fiscal years 2020 to 2024, or the federal fiscal years 2019 to 2023. And it covers the Community Development Block Grant Program and the Home Investment Partnership Programs from the current year and for the next 5 years. These are funds we get annually from HUD. We're a HUD direct entitlement for both of these funds. Community Development Block Grant is used for a wide variety of community and housing and planning, administrative programs, public services, and the home program is strictly for housing for low-income persons. And we're also going to give you tonight the details of the budget, which is the annual action plan, and it describes the first year of the 5-year plan. The 5-year plan, it's used to establish the priorities and the objectives for the use of the funds over the next 5 years. And the priorities of the 5-year CP are generally to support Build One Portsmouth, the city's comprehensive plan, and the statutory purposes of the CDBG and home programs. And HUD looks at these annually when we report back to them about what we've done, and they will evaluate what we've done against this 5-year plan and their regulations. These are the priorities that we've established for the 5-year plan, and they're pretty broad to give us some latitude in the use of the funds, and they include providing effective city program administration and planning, support neighborhoods with improved public facilities and infrastructure, services, reducing blight, sustaining home ownership, providing decent and affordable housing, continuing economic development, and maintaining support services for the homeless persons at risk of homelessness and persons with special needs. So HUD hasn't announced the allocation for the fiscal year 20 CDBG program, which starts on July 1. So we do our budget based upon what we have in this current year, which is this $1.5 million. We're also anticipating $44,880 of program income for a total revenue of $1.6 million. And then we've outlined the requests here. We had $3.8 million of requests for CDBG funds for this next year.
Before you go off that page, just off the top of your head, do you know how much we were getting 10 years ago?
No, it was probably a bit more. The trend was going down, and actually this year we got a slight increase, and from what I understand, it's probably going to be around the same or maybe even another slight increase for the coming year, but I'd have to research what we got 10 years ago.
Is that based on any formula?
Yeah, there's a pretty complex formula that, they look at your population and poverty, and I forget what else that goes into what the entitlement is. So HUD appropriates an exact amount, and then based upon the number of entitlements nationwide and the use of the formula, then they back into what Portsmouth will actually get.
Okay.
So we've broken the CDBG funds out by various categories, and the first one is public services. HUD limits the entitlements to the use of 15% of the allocation, the current year allocation to public services. And so we're showing the current year funding, the requested funding, and the proposed funding. And we only had one new request by a new organization this year, which we were not able to fund. The first four are programs that have been run through the Parks and Recreation Department for many years, including the senior transportation, kids' meals, health and wellness, and youth leadership. The next program is the Independence Service. In Independence Center, they run programs for disabled persons, throughout Southampton roads. And then the next two, there's a park intake, which is Portsmouth Area Resource Coalition, and 4 Kids intake. And they do a coordinated service for persons who are homeless, at risk of homelessness. They help to coordinate that with the service providers. And then the last one we're funding is the Eggleston Homeless Employment Service. They work with people who are homeless and help them find employment. The next category then is the admin and planning. HUD limits that to 20% of the allocation, and so we've included a amount for just general planning and admin. We've included $125,000 for the city's comprehensive housing study, which I understand was part of one of your tasks that you wanted the staff to work on. $50,000 for implementation of the Poverty Initiative Task Force, and then some money, $100,000, that will work with DSS, and they work with the Portsmouth Homeless Action Consortium, PHAC. They're going to use money to help them sort of better organize and plan and administer that organization, with the intent to help them get more money. I think we've sort of found that they probably are leaving some money on the table that they get through HUD also, and so I think that's what we're going to be using that money for. And then the final category is just sort of the other, and it's largely the bricks and mortar kinds of projects that we'll fund with the CDBG. And so this coming year, we're proposing additional money at the Sportsplex. We've identified some transportation and pedestrian improvements, generally intersection improvements at some locations throughout the city, including right by the Sportsplex, to sort of facilitate and improve pedestrian crossings there at and adjacent to the sports complex. And then the Wesley Community Service Center, they requested, and we've agreed to fund them some money for improvements at their building on Elm Avenue.
And those are building improvements.
Yes, more or less. Like at the sports complex, I think we were sort of envisioning the money not necessarily for the buildings, but for site improvements overall.
But I was talking about Wesley.
Yes, Wesley, they needed a roof and some access improvements and a few other things. So this is just a quick overview of the home program. As I said, it's really housing centric. So its purpose is to create affordable housing for low-income households. And the eligible activities include down and closing cost assistance, construction, rehab, and/or reconstruction of single-family housing, acquisition and/or construction or rehab costs of affordable rental housing, including permanent supportive housing, and tenant-based rental assistance. And for this coming year, we're projecting the allocation, again, based on what we had this year, which is $452,000, and we anticipate $18,000 of program income for a total revenue of $470,000, and we had requests of $442,917. And what we're proposing to fund then is putting some money into housing rehab, probably focusing on elderly and disabled owners to to sort of help them with some preventative maintenance kinds of things. We've been doing down payment and closing for a few years now, so we're going to put some more money into that. And then annually, under the regulations, we have to put 15% of our money aside for a certified community housing development organization, or a CHODO. And so that's what that last item is, and that project hasn't been identified at this point.
Do we have any of those in the city anymore?
No.
We worked for a few years, the last maybe 5 or 6 years, with Habitat of Southampton Roads, but they've had a number of problems, and so we aren't currently funding them, so we don't have one at this point. And unfortunately, it's just not a lot of money and so $67,000 just doesn't go a whole very far if you're trying to do some kind of housing project.
But you have to allot
You
it
have to-
there.
Yes.
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 Required by law.
So what will happen? What will that money be
To roll
used
back
for?
over.
Well, so the money needs to be committed in 2 years from the time that HUD approves the action plan, and if it's not committed to a project, they take it back.
So we will come up with,
Well, trying to find a
That-
CHODO.
Yes.
It has to be a CHODO.
It does.
yeah.
And they are really not existing pretty
Right,
much in Hampton
right.
Roads anymore. But the federal government still has that as a requirement.
That's right.
It's got to be a good CHODO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A good job.
When you find one, but it's hard to find.
We've been through that.
Yes. And so this is the schedule for the completion of the 5-year plan and the action plan. We'll do the public hearings at your budget hearings on April 9 and 23rd. Adoption is scheduled for May 7. We submit then by the middle of May, and our program year starts on July 1st. I can take any additional questions.
Any of the organizations, go back to the previous slide where the money's allocated to Independence Center and some of the rest of them. Are they aware at this point of any of the proposed
No, we're not.
decreases?
The first presentation is to you all.
Okay. So when will they be notified?
Well,
Go on, mister.
Well, the only ones that we've actually reduced, the ones that we've reduced from their request are these Parks and Recreation program, and we'll have that discussion with them shortly.
Well-
The reality is, I looked at their spending over the last 5 years, and their requests tend to be a bit higher than what they usually spend, and so we've sort of align their proposed funding with what they spend. And I think
I got you.
Okay.
Eggleston is a little less than what they requested, but it's in line with what they
Last year.
got this year.
Yeah.
All right, Shannon?
Yes, Mr. Kramer. I noticed on some of the programs that you all fund have to do with homelessness and
Yes.
homelessness. One of the programs I did notice up there was Portsmouth Volunteers for the Homeless.
Right.
Now, is that a program you don't fund, or you don't consider funding those types of programs?
They didn't request money.
They didn't request it.
No, they requested money through the other city program,
Not this one.
but they didn't request
The
money.
city
through
funds
this.
them, but funds them out of the general fund, not through
Out
the...
of the organizations, support to organizations.
Lisa?
Okay, and a question with the home projects, what percentage of communities, or how many communities took advantage or are being utilized in the home projects?
I don't quite
I guess
follow you.
I guess my question, under the home project, I know, what is it, slide 10? Yeah.
Yes.
I guess,
That's
how
what
do
they
they determine which communities or which sections or which housing communities utilize these funds?
So the down and closing program, we actually that's actually implemented and administered by the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission. And it's open basis, anyone can apply, and they can buy a house anywhere in the city. They just need to use it as their principal residence. And it's the same, that's essentially how we'll do this housing rehab. We'll make it available on a first come, first serve, presuming they qualify, and they'll be able to use it anywhere in the city as long as they qualify under the program.
Okay. And then with the CHOTO, have we considered any community action agencies like STOP organization?
No. The way that the CHOTO regulations are written, STOP probably would not qualify as a CHOTO. They have to have the regulations are very specific as to how the organization needs to be organized and structured in terms of their membership and their mission. And so I don't think STOP would qualify.
I sit on that board, so I just wanted to be able to refer the right information. So.
What is the, go back to the slide on the kids' intake meals program. What is that program?
The 4 Kids?
Yeah, 4 Kids intake services.
So the way this is, 4 Kids is they're a regional organization. They're in Norfolk, and they run a housing hotline. And they now, I think, are serving all 7 cities in Hampton Roads with this service. And so if you're having a housing crisis, so to speak, if you're going to be homeless, you are homeless, you can call them and they will refer you to the various agencies that might be able to help you. And then that's coordinated through Park. Park then has a caseworker. If you actually are homeless, they'll refer you to Park immediately, and you'll work with Park's caseworker. And if you have housing, then 4 Kids will refer you to wherever you need to go. And the thing about this is, so the PHAC organization, the homeless Portsmouth, the Portsmouth Homeless Action Consortium, who, that's the coming together of all these homeless agencies to coordinate their services, and they also coordinate their funding application to HUD. And HUD says to them, you'll score better if your consortium, your continuum of care will score better if you have this central intake. And so this is something that PHAC has been working on for several years. Park has been doing the whole thing for the last 2 or 3 years, but they all decided that 4 Kids, because they were doing this regionally, it was better to use them to provide the hotline service.
Do we know how many Portsmouth folks have taken advantage of this service?
Well, they give me a quarterly report that tells me, they give me an unduplicated number for the year through this quarterly report, and they actually, so we gave them 17,000 last year, and when they applied this year, they said they actually, and I can get you the numbers that they've done so far this year, but they actually told me that they were asking for a double amount because they served more than double than what they had thought they projected when they started the service. So it's a fairly large number.
It would be good to see how many Portsmouth residents.
Yeah, I can get that.
This would only be Portsmouth residents that we will report back to you.
Yeah. And this comes, did I pick up that PHAC has made that recommendation?
Yeah, yes. This is all through
continuum.
coordinated and with PHAC.
And along with that, I'd like to see what the other localities contributed to that as well.
Okay, we can get that.
Will you put the schedule back up, please? Just so we can see it one more time. All right, thank you. Any questions? Any questions?
Thanks, sir.
City Manager's report, Dr. Patton.
Yes, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, we have 4 items coming before you tonight on the City Manager's report. The first is an adoption of an ordinance accepting a Shelter Plus Care grant in the amount of $527,449 from the Department of Housing and Urban Development and appropriating said funds in the FY 2019 Grants Fund for use by the Department of Behavioral Health Care Services to provide supportive services to chronically homeless and at-risk Portsmouth residents. The second is an adoption of an ordinance accepting funding from the Virginia Department of Social Services in the amount of $1,200 and appropriating said amount to the FY 2019 Social Services Fund for the Family Partnership Meeting Incentive Program. The third is an adoption of an ordinance modifying the source of funding in the Capital Improvement Fund budget for the construction of a new waste management building. The ordinance prepared for City Council consideration changes the funding source for the $1,300,000 2018 appropriation from bond proceeds to an operating transfer in the Waste Management Fund. Design for the new waste management building has been completed and subject to appropriation of the additional funding needed for the project in the FY 2020 budget. It is anticipating the construction will commence during the fiscal year 2020. This is not a new appropriation. It will change the source of funding from a prior appropriation from bond proceeds to Waste Management Fund balance. Waste Management Fund balance. The fourth is an adoption of a resolution electing to proceed with negotiations with Amata Properties Development, LLC, regarding the potential construction of a new City Hall, parking garage, and public safety facility, and the redevelopment of vacant properties.
While we're on the agenda, let's go over the presentations. We have two tonight. One is the introduction of a new police dog, Duke. And Dr. Pat, you're going to have the chief come forward
Yes.
for that introduction?
Yes, and she's asked if we could make Duke as close to first as possible so she can get him out. He's only 6 months old.
You don't want Duke to make a mess. Bloodhound born on September the 14th, 2018. So
Yes.
this is just a puppy.
Yes.
We will pledge very quickly.
And the citizens named in a poll, the citizens named the dog Duke.
All right, and then the second presentation is to recognize the foster families. This is part of what we're doing throughout the whole year. We have 3 tonight.
Yes, sir.
And I'll call on you, and you'll call on the director
Little Hill,
of
yes.
Social Services to come up.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then we have 2 public hearings. The first public hearing deals with the unsolicited proposal that you announced to council on May 22nd, 2018.
Yes, sir.
And I was surprised that it took until June 5th, 2 weeks later, that any news media picked up on that. You made a public announcement in here stating that the name of the developer. That's
Yes.
strange.
Yes.
But we'll have, and the public hearing is on the MOU.
Yes.
Okay.
All on the MOU.
And then the next is a public hearing on bids for a wireless facilities franchise. And Mr. City Attorney, the state constitution requires us to go through a franchise process for the use of public lands, wharfs, right-of-ways that are beyond a certain period of time.
Correct. There must be a mayor, vice mayor, members of the city council. There must be a public bid for any interest in property beyond 5 years. But a franchise is a extension that could be up to 40 plus years. And so that's what the requirement we're fulfilling by this process.
And it's scripted both by the state constitution and the state code. So we have to go through a process of determining how many bids we got.
Correct.
And then have a public hearing on those bids.
Correct.
And then we'll, at the end of the public hearing, we'll consider the franchise ordinance.
Correct. There's one person in already, but
There could be more.
there could be more.
Okay.
I'm missing something.
So I just wanted to go over the process to make sure that. Okay.
Yes, Mayor and Vice Mayor, members of council, I have a few report backs. You had asked on the February 11th that the revenue, local tax, and fee benchmarking review be brought forward. That was presented on last night during our public works session. And then we presented to you the 2020 census report, the resolution for creating the complete count committee, that it was set forth its responsibilities in a resolution will come before you at the March 12th City Council managers, in the City Council's managers report. And you had also asked that we consider in the 2020 budget some amount that will include whatever assistance necessary in the advertising, whatever, in this important process. So that is noted. The next, you asked, tasked me, staff, to evaluate the safety of the Portsmouth City Jail building. The city's evaluation team visited the city jail on Monday, February the 11th, to have a walkthrough of the facility, looking at structural, environmental, and mechanical systems. And we had experts as a part of the team. We're looking for a report back in the next 30 to 45 days. The next is on the 12th, doing the utilities project, staff to determine if revenue bonds or general obligation bonds should be used for the utility projects. As shared during last night's public work session, the city's financial staff and financial advisors recommended revenue bonds be used to fund utility projects. And lastly, during our city council meeting, we had the parent to come forward who unfortunately lost her daughter in the accident on Willard Drive and West Road, reporting back that the city engineer is conducting an engineering analysis of the intersection to determine if the intersection is in accordance with local, state, and federal requirements. And this report will be completed in 60 days from February 1, before the parents came before council, and once the accident occurred, our engineering work began the work with police to make that determination. So this is underway. Yes, I'm going to do that, but I forgot my papers. I have one more to report, but with my rushing, I left it on my desk. If we could go to the city council reports, and then I could get that, and I could report my last, if you may.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, we have now the city council liaison reports, and we'll start to my left.
From the Economic Development Authority, we had two companies that came forward requesting grants from the EDA this month. One was, it certainly was, David Host, who has purchased a building at Dinwiddie and Queen to do a complete gut renovation in there, and also the very old company in the city that's expanding in the, Robert, where are you to help me, Ron? A wonderful expansion over in Port Center. Collins Machine Work, thank you. And so that was really great to hear that they're expanding and moving their headquarters, office, and manufacturing into the Port Center area. And then just today, the Portsmouth Port and Industrial Commission had a wonderful meeting. I mentioned to you all last week that Admiral Rock, who was in charge of Navy Mid-Atlantic facilities, came and had in this room this morning with the PPIC commissioners and talked about all of the, speaking of federal properties, the Navy properties in the city, and some that might be available to partner with, and some things that we might be able to do to make them more efficiently used by either private industry or the city. So I would say there is some urgency to the matter. The PPIC appointed 2 members of the committee to work directly with Mr. Baldwin and Mr. Moore and the Navy guys to get going.
The port.
And the Port Authority to get on the stick. So that was probably one of the best meetings I've seen in this room in a long time.
I attended both of those meetings. I would say the grant recipient of the business for Dinwiddie Street, that business had been, or building, been vacant for 15 years, so that'll certainly be welcome. I do have a question, though, on some follow-up that I mentioned a few weeks ago, and that's our VRS multiplier.
We're going to go on.
Ours is at 1.7. I think most cities are at 1.85. I'd like to, Mayor, if there's consensus, I'd like for staff to come back and see what we can do to get ours up to the 1.85 range.
You're asking the city manager to do a study and make a recommendation to us?
Absolutely.
We'll take that even though we're liaisons. Everybody okay?
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
We have it.
All right.
Okay, I'm reporting on PRHA, had that board meeting last Thursday. They passed a couple resolutions, one for a new independent audit with Coase Resnick. He will be their independent auditor. They also have a resolution for a new contract for WAN services, internet and telephone services. That's going to be with Cox Virginia Telecom. Another resolution for solid waste collection and transport equipment, and that's going to be with Mid-Atlantic Waste. Next resolution was a contract for 2 sport utility vehicles. And the last resolution was a contract for Swanson Homes that needed to replace the HVAC systems. They had, I think it was 17 that were replaced during the Matthew storm, but they still have 150 that need to be redone. Had a presentation from Jamie Bordenave, and he gave a really good presentation on the RAD, which is the Resident Assistant Demolition Program. And with Lincoln Park, just an update, the demolition of Phase 1 of Lincoln Park for Lexington Place will begin in the next 30 days. And the construction of new units will be called, of course, Lexington Place will be online in late spring. And Dale's Home, the renovations of the remaining 150 units are wrapping up. There was one big discussion piece that came up, and that is a cooperation agreement between PRHA and the city that is a 1940 document. And that 1940 document is saying that they don't owe us what they've been paying, and we're not paying what they should be getting. So I don't know, Attorney Ashley Solomon, if that is a document that has been updated. I don't know if they got it from you or if they found it in their office somewhere, but the document is a 1940s document. I'll forward it, City Clerk Deborah White, so that you can share it with all of the council members so they can take a look at that. But that is an item of discussion that they want to put on the agenda for our joint meeting coming up with them. So if we can get some heads up on if this is still a working document. I mean, all the people that signed it are no longer here, of course. So just want to know where we stand with that cooperation agreement.
Nate?
Parking Authority was scheduled to meet last week, but there was not enough members to attend the meeting, so the meeting was postponed until next month. So I'll have an update on that after that meeting occurs. Lisa and I are the school board liaisons, but everybody was here at the wonderful retreat we had this past weekend, so I really don't have to say much about that. And that's all I have at this time.
Yes, there was a meeting last Thursday of the Retirement Board for the Portsmouth Fire and Police and Supplemental Retirement Systems. There was a slight adjustment to the roles and responsibilities. Language was added under the investment manager section. Consultant was modified to be investment advisor. And what the idea was behind that is that giving the investment advisor more latitude and flexibility to be able to make the changes necessary to stay up with the market. And there was an asset allocation change, not real big, but the old targets, for example, we have the global equity, fixed income, real estate, and alternative investments. The old target global equity was 70%, fixed income 25%, real estate 3%, and alternative investments 2%. The new target is global equity, still 70%, fixed income, 22%, real estate, 3%, and alternative investments are 5%. And so alternative investments are things like hedge funds and other opportunities or vehicles that are performing well in the market right now. So.
Thank you. As far as the Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization, the TPO, we reported that at its January meeting, it took action, which is a landmark action, and that is to unanimously vote that the contract that the Commonwealth has with Elizabeth River Crossings is bad for the Commonwealth, of course, but also bad for the region. That the contract is not essentially a Portsmouth problem, but a problem for the entire Hampton Roads region. And based on that, they created a task force to look at ways to do away with the Elizabeth River Crossings contract. And that task force had its first meeting yesterday to get organized. I was elected chair of the task force, and Kenny Alexander, mayor of Norfolk, was elected vice chair. What lies ahead, we're lining up a briefing from the Attorney General's office on this agreement, because again, this is an agreement between the state and this private company. Next, we want to have a discussion with the person who's got the longest history of the development of this agreement and how many iterations it went through. And then lastly, we want to have a discussion with the Secretary of Transportation. So that's what's before us. The next meeting will most likely be in March, and it will be scheduled around the availability of the AG's office. Thank you, everybody. Dr. Pat?
Yes, I have my last report back. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of City Council, on February 8th, you received a resolution from Mr. Claude C. Parent, School Board Chairman, requesting the City Council to realign the FY 18-19 grant fund budget by appropriating the amount of $4,209,270 approved by the school board. As city manager, along with my financial staff, reviewed the submission and determined there were discrepancies in the adopted resolution. A letter was sent to Superintendent Bracey on February the 20th, stating that the request cannot move forward until all information in the initial request is validated. I'm waiting a new submission from Superintendent Bracey.
Thank you. We do have a need for a closed session. Yeah.
I just want to ask a question before we go for City Manager for a future report back. I know we don't have that information tonight, but last year when we were doing our budget meetings, we advised that the Human Resources is working towards the hazardous duty supplement for the paramedics, and we just haven't heard an update, and it's been almost a year. If we could just get an update on where that is.
As it is, we'll get it because she's going to copy it.
Thank you.
She's
Any
going to
other
listen to
questions
everything.
of the City Manager?
No, sir.
Okay. We do have a need for a closed session.
Do they have it?
I don't see it.
It's in the box.
Okay, I got it. I move to go into closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code subsection 2.2-3711A.8 for the purpose of consultation with legal counsel employed by the city on specific matters requiring the provision of legal advice specifically regarding the Portsmouth retirement systems, and B, pursuant to Virginia Code subsection 2.2-3711A.7 for the purpose of consultation with legal counsel pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such consultation in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the city, specifically regarding Newport.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Battle is absent. Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Glover?
Yes.
Mrs. Lucasberg?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Ms. Simmons?
Yes.
Mayor Rowe?
Yes, we're in closed session.